welcome to this edition of the Advance. Michael Quinn Sullivan sitting here with Brandon Waltons. Brandon, happy Monday to you.
Yes, it is a happy Monday, isn't it?
Okay, Brandon, let's just moments ago, the Republican caucus of the Texas House had a meeting in which they were going to decide on punishments to be meted out to the quorum busting Democrats. Talk about the mixed bag that's kind of emerged.
Yeah, so just right before we were on, I was just talking to some of the members who were there. Their meeting actually wrapped up just, less than an hour ago. Republican caucus met to determine a few things, right? How they deal with quorum busting Democrats, but in several different ways. One, how are they going to deal with that going forward, which is more in line with what Governor Greg Abbott has called for in his call on the special session. He actually specifically added last week legislation to deter or punish people from breaking quorum, like we saw happen with the Democrats.
Future tense.
Right.
Deter
and to
in
that
the future.
extent,
Yeah.
and to that extent, you had the caucus endorse several legislative proposals that would do that. Some of those are making its way through the process, could potentially be voted on this week. But these are dealing with things like, legislation and potential constitutional amendments. Then you have another set of issues that the caucus was looking at, which is, okay, should we change the rules? Now, the rules are usually voted on right in the beginning of session, but they can be changed or updated. You can have a rules vote anytime. And so there's a lot of discussion in the House caucus saying, okay, well, maybe we'll re-vote on the rules, we'll amend the rules, and we'll make it more clear that you lose, for example, if you break quorum, you lose your committee chair position. You lose certain privileges, your seniority. All of that passed. So the House Republican caucus passed that, meaning they've essentially endorsed the proposal. It doesn't make it actually happen. They need to have that vote happen on the floor. But the Republican caucus has endorsed those punishments going forward, again, on Democrats. What did not pass today, however, was an effort to essentially recommend a censure and punishment for those who already did. So taking away vice chairmanship, seniority, et cetera, for those members, that did not pass. It needed a 2/3 support in the caucus to pass. They were just a few votes shy of that. And why that happened remains to be seen. At least one member, Representative Brent Money, went out there and said that he believes that the speaker's team was, or the speaker himself was whipping votes against it. Other members have disputed that, said that wasn't true. This is a closed door meeting, so we weren't there. Who knows exactly what was said? But it shows that even after what we're coming off of a few weeks, what has felt like some tenuous unity among the Republican caucus, you're starting to see some cracks in that now as they're actually divided on how they're actually going to deal or maybe not deal with those who fled in terms of punishing them.
Okay, so I do want to, though, get some clarity from you. The rules of the Texas House that currently exist, that all the Democrats voted for, Republicans, everyone voted for, does talk about fines. And last week, those fines, so the fines are...
The fines are put out there, yes. You had Charlie Guerin, who's head of House Administration, sending letters to those Democrat members, invoices, essentially. That amount comes to between the $500 fine, and the rules also allow for a split of the cost to fine them. That amounts to about $10,000 per member. Certainly not an amount of money you or I would want to probably be paying right now, but it's also maybe small in comparison to the amount of money that a lot of these members were fundraising on during that quorum break. Now, it's interesting that while we're talking about this over in the Senate, you have Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who has recommended just today, perhaps new legislation that would ban fundraising during special sessions, which is something that we saw happen during this quorum break. Would this have happened in the same way if Democrats couldn't raise money, just like they're barred from doing during a regular session? It's no coincidence, I think, that the Democrat quorum breaks we've seen in the last several years here have all happened during special sessions where they're allowed to leave town and then raise as much money as they want.
Yeah, and I think that there is some evidences for why there might be some support for this when you look at the AG's
Mhm.
legal action against Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, who was very clearly out ringleading kind of the money gathering with
Yes.
this. So you can see where people are saying, wait a second, we say during the regular session you can't raise money. What makes the special session different? And in so much it feels like maybe there wasn't the anticipation that people would play these games.
Yeah.
It's only been really in the last decade that we've seen this kind of gamemanship going on with breaking quorum. And then none of this, of course, Brandon, impacts the governor's lawsuit against Gene Wu, or excuse me, the governor's quo warranto action before the Texas Supreme Court against Gene Wu, the Democrat caucus chairman, Democrat from Houston, and then Attorney General Ken Paxton's suit against Wu and 12 other Democrats. Again, both Abbott and Paxton seeking to have these 13 Democrats have their seats vacated. The Supreme Court is, I guess, in the next 15 days, expecting to begin their deliberation on the matter.
Potentially, and we'll see what happens there,
Right.
whether or not they do move forward with it, or whether they say, well, the Democrats are back, this case is moot now, and decide to rule that way. We'll find out.
Okay, so let's set the past for a second. Let's talk about what's coming up this week. We call this the advance because we want to talk about what's coming up. Looking back, let's look forward now for a second. The thing that sucked the oxygen out of the room was congressional redistricting. That legislation, that map, if you will, is on the governor's desk waiting for his signature. But we still have a lot of other items.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of certainly Democrats, but some Republicans as well that would be happy to just adjourn now and call it a day. But there are some other items on Governor Abbott's special session agenda that haven't yet been addressed, at least in the House. The Senate by now has passed almost all of the items, especially after passing the maps over the weekend. And so most of this is over in the House's court right now. You have today where they're going to be discussing legislation that has already passed the Senate that would essentially lower the amount that local governments can raise property taxes to without voter approval. It's currently at 3.5%. It would lower it to 2.5%. There's also legislation dealing with some disclosures, more notice, more transparency for taxpayers. Certainly not a bad thing, but some have pointed out, I think rightly so, that this is a time when people are talking not just about how to lower future increases of property taxes, but what about actually lowering them, period, right? Actually something to lower property taxes. We haven't really seen much in the way of that moving through the special session. And so that's one thing that's certainly on the radar, as well as you've got a calendar for Tuesday where you have legislation that would end the STAR test in public schools. You have legislation that would restore the Attorney General's power to go after election fraud cases, something that hit a snag after the House and Senate were unable to agree on a final version of that bill during the regular session. So some of this is moving, but it is interesting, Michael. I'm sure you saw that also over the weekend, Representative Tony Tinderholt went on X and said that House Bill 7, I think is the number, dealing with stricter punishments for mailing abortion-inducing drugs, something that has a big priority for example, Texas Right to Life and pro-life groups, that there's behind the scenes some opposition to it, and he's concerned it might not actually come to the floor for a vote during the special session, despite being put on the agenda by Abbott.
Yeah, so I think there's we have a lot to get done, particularly if Speaker Burrows is going to meet his I guess soft deadline of Labor Day, a week from today, actually, to get all these things done. Feels like it might be a little bit of a lift.
It's ambitious, but it depends how much they want to do. I mean, look, the House committees have over the past several days, really mainly talking about Thursday, Friday, have held some hearings where they've gone through some of these issues. You had House State Affairs taking up the Women's Privacy Act, which is, is something that's been a fight for a decade. They had a committee hearing on that. But you also have certain issues like banning taxpayer-funded lobbying that still don't seem to be getting traction in the House.
All right, so shift gears real quick. I'd love to get your take on the dueling endorsements that we saw come out this weekend and today in that Attorney General's race. Now we now have 4 candidates who have declared for the race: State Senator Mays Middleton of Galveston, State Senator Joan Huffman of Houston, Aaron Wright, former DOJ official from Central Texas, and now Chip Roy, a member of Congress, former first assistant in the AG's office under Ken Paxton. Wright also worked for Paxton AG's office. Huffman and Middleton are kind of over here doing their legislative things, but you saw this weekend Ted Cruz announce his endorsement of Chip Roy, and now today Ken Paxton has announced his endorsement of Aaron Wright. A little unusual to see someone who's on the ballot seeking a next job endorsing a successor.
Yeah, it was surprising. I think people were surprised on Saturday. Senator Ted Cruz had essentially said before that he probably wasn't going to endorse in this race, and so when he came out and endorsed Chip Roy, of course, that got a lot of attention over the weekend. Whether or not that had anything to do with Paxton's endorsement, I don't know. Both Chip Roy and Aaron Wright's in an interesting position, having both served as chiefs of staff to Ted Cruz, right? And so Chip Roy, of course, was his first chief of staff, and he got the endorsement. Aaron Wright's out with Attorney General Ken Paxton's endorsement today. And there's certainly plenty more endorsements, potential endorsements at least, that are out there on the table that either the two of those or Joan Huffman or Mays Middleton could get. It is just a reminder that, especially with special sessions that linger into the summer, like we have seen now, it is an interesting mix of sort of the legislative season, but you've also have these campaigns going on at the same time. And so that creates an interesting comparison.
It is. I was having a conversation with a fellow last week who we're talking about the AG's race and the comptroller race and these the legislature and the U.S. Senate, and then at one point he said, "So now, when is the governor and lieutenant governor up again?" And it took him a while. Well, no, they're up on the ballot right now, and we spent an uncomfortably long time over our chips and queso trying to come up with the answer. No, it's right now, because so much of the political conversation is being driven by the AG's race and the U.S. Senate race, and neither the governor nor the lieutenant governor have much in the way of opposition at this time.
No, not now. And you even had last week Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick making it double, triple, quadruple official that he says he's running for re-election. Neither has gotten in the way. Certainly there's people who have filed, but you haven't seen a lot of traction for any sort of serious opponent to either of them. And it looks like it will probably stay that way heading into the election. So I think the big races to watch are going to be the Attorney General's race, to your point, as well as that Senate race between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton.
All right. Well, Brandon Walton, thanks for sitting down, and thank you for joining us on this edition of The Advance.